All right, the meeting of the Fiscal and Audit Committee, and today is the 28th of August, 2023, I think.
Yes, it is.
So.
Can I hear you?
Yeah, I don't know what the air conditioner runs.
Oh, yeah, everybody may have to project a bit.
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Oh, good, thank you.
okay,
Good,
good.
good.
Good,
That's
thanks for confirmation, Liz. Okay, so we have one agenda item, which is the budget.
It was an agenda?
Oh,
Yes,
I didn't see it. It was on
It's
the
under-
email?
Yeah, it was attached to Paulina's, a notice of the meeting with the Zoom and the actual
Oh.
location.
yeah.
Okay.
Under board docs, it's under finance committee, basically. It used to be under board and now it's moved to finance committee. So. It's up there. Do we have any public comments? I don't see anybody.
I don't see anybody.
Before we get into the details and the meeting specifics, I just really want to say, in reading through the budget development values, I just really feel like, I like the statement. I like the wording of, how it sets out how our values, are reflected in our budget, but I just really wanted to say how much I appreciate it. It really says, something important about how we make our decisions. So I just really liked it.
Is that you? Did we just introduce this?
It was developed by Helen.
Oh, okay.
With CPC. I
Oh,
don't think it
nice.
ever came to the board, other
Okay.
than in the budget.
Other than in the budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's Helen?
Helen Benjamin.
Helen Benjamin.
Oh, okay. Dr. Benjamin.
When she was interim here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's.
we have borrowed heavily. The document is pretty much the same document, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was just on repeat.
It is,
Yeah.
and
but just-
but someday we hope to.
Yeah.
Go there.
Yeah, put it on the website somewhere. It's really great.
It's good that it's still.
I like reading it again before I got into to all the other stuff. But I did have a question, before we get rolling. There were, a couple of I'm trying to look at what page, if you can look at page.
The budget document, not the presentation, the top one, if you would.
The adopted budget,
Yeah.
Yes.
that's the one.
The top one.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking.
Here it is. right.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect,
That's the one
yes,
with
thank
the-
you.
With the nicely worded, so. Let's see.
Thank you.
Would it be easier
Can you just,
for to have a-
if we're gonna be referring to this document, can you just refer to what page when we
Yeah,
start talking?
I'm
Great. Oh,
looking
perfect,
for
thank you. Yes.
the page.
I can still get both things up for you, but that way you can have.
Great, good, thank you.
That's good.
Right, okay, so on page 4. At the top, item number, let's see. Under expenditures. I should have written it down. Okay, I'm sorry, it's page 2. Page 2, under the revenue, state revenue ongoing, and number 5. Yeah, item number 5, supplemental allocation factors, Pell Grant recipients. On AB 540, students budgeted 0.3 million. And then California College Promise Grant 0.7 million. I was wondering if there's some way we can kind of say like exactly what that figure is, you know, like 600,000 or something, because 0.3 million doesn't really, it's not specific to me enough,
Yeah,
you know, so.
I agree.
Because it's a little vague, so 0.7 million, if we could just get like the actual numbers, you know, or close there, you know, there too, obviously. When you got it at 0.7, the numbers probably are not down to the, you know, last decimal. But yeah, I would just like to see those kind of cleared up instead of a percentage of the million.
The whole document was pretty much had it at millions. 2.7, 1.7, 0.7. So you would like them all in actual numbers?
Well, just the ones that are like 2.7 is clear, but a percentage of a million, like 0.3 million, I don't know what that is like. You know, is that like 700K or?
No, it's
what?
300,000.
300,000.
300 is, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
300K, yeah, okay. That's what I mean. So as long as we can just.
I mean, I didn't know that was, finance and audit language and that, because I mean, I'm not used to seeing it like that either unless it's 2.7, but the 0.3 million and 0.7 million dollars, that just was new for me too. But I didn't know if that was something that's common in CPA, you know, language. Maybe CPA speak like that. I don't know.
Like what is 0.1
Well,
million?
While we're on that one,
Okay, yes, yes.
go back. It seems to me that 0.3 million plus 0.7 million equals 1 million, and it says the total is 1 million, but A says no change. And that needs a number, and it's not gonna add up to 1 million after that.
I see, yes. Okay. I don't know what the answer is there.
Yeah.
Cornelia has her hand up.
Yeah, if I may, on this one, is the 1 million, is that just the change compared to last year? That it's not the total, right? Or is that the total? In that very line item?
Yes,
Line
I
number
know,
5.
I'm not sure how,
Talked about. The 1 million, the total, or
I'm
is
not
that the
sure.
change?
Are you talking about line number 5?
Right.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can find out. And Rudy's not here. He'll be here in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there he is. Yeah.
He's
one-
online?
One of the things we talked about with last fiscal committee meeting when we were looking at the tentative was to go through these assumptions and clarify so that where it fits, and it doesn't always fit, but where it fits, and you're talking about an amount of money, you're saying, what was it last year, the amount of money? And what is it going to be this year? And sometimes what goes into that, so if you go scroll to 11 here, give you an example.
Like property
Not
tax.
that one, 11 in expended, or local revenue, sorry. Locals, yeah, further down. I think it's 11. No, sorry, right there, top of the page.
Yeah.
2 and 3. I have no clue what's going on here. How much was it last year? Are we projecting more students or actually units, because that's what we're getting paid for? How many more units are we projecting? I can't tell. I can't even quite tell how to back it out.
Okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry.
But I think what you're talking about is under local revenues, you starting with letter A, they refer to our units remain at $46 a unit. And so is that what you're referring to?
No, 2 and 3 under local revenue at the top.
Page 3, bottom of page 3.
So you rather, it's instead of seeing just only statements like 11% from fiscal year this to this, you actually want to see the number.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, and basically the units, what are we projecting the actual increase to be? Because I think you're saying it's an increase, but I'm not even 100% sure because of the 11%.
Correct. As I said before, this is pretty much the format that's been here. We just sort of put the new numbers in. The format that has been used the last several years, as I understand it, was to compare this year's adopted budget to
Mhm.
last year's adopted budget.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's not necessarily how I would do it. But that's how it's been done.
But on the
So-
assumptions here, it's not happening.
It says the revenue from international students projected to increase by 5% compared to the adopted budget for 23, 22, 23 last year.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm not,
The adopted budget wasn't what actually happened last year,
right,
right? We got a
Right.
different.
right.
So,
we did.
So,
But you're saying that we are, that we are assuming that the rate will increase by 11% in comparison to the last year's budget, which
no,
didn't really happen?
no, the rate, underline bold, the rate
Uh-huh.
increased by 11%. We brought that to the board. There was a debate. We increased the rate by 11%.
We
The
didn't. Okay,
revenue is going to increase by 5,
okay,
right?
yeah,
So if the same number of students come this year as
Uh-huh.
last year, and the rate went up 11%, you would expect we would have higher than 5% in new
in
revenue.
revenue.
You won't, because not that many students will come.
Right.
Right, I
That's
think
what
I saw that in your
That's
next
what I'm
line.
trying to identify is
Got it.
what is our assumption about the number?
I understand. We can make this, we can write this differently.
Okay,
Last year we got $100. This year we're gonna get $103.
yeah, I think I read somewhere in here that we
More
did have a lower number of international students. Right?
right,
And we think that our projection of international students may still be high.
Mhm.
Right, we may not get that. That's what I was trying to say in
Uh-huh.
my presentation, is while we have that in our budget right now, it still may be inflated.
No,
So-
I appreciate you've done a lot to kind of scale that back.
Right.
And I'm still not
Okay,
clear
we'll
the
rewrite
way
this.
it's written,
We will
how
rewrite this.
we are.
so it seems like maybe it's a statement and then a bullet point that actually has the math in it. So it's really clear, this is what we're talking about, this is what it means in number format, but the numbers are right, you know,
Right.
This is a total rollover of the format that has been
Yeah.
used.
Right.
It is,
And
can't be
this
improved.
has, and this has been discussed in other years,
Yeah.
when you weren't even here.
It is,
Yeah.
we can be more explicit and never refer to last year's adopted budget. Because I don't think it's worth discussing. Things happen a lot different between
Uh-huh.
adopted budget and what we ended with, even
Yeah.
adjusted budget wasn't all that accurate. So we'll just say what, I'm more of a what happened, actuals last year.
Right.
What's our budget for this year? Nothing else matters. Right?
Okay.
No matter whatever the budget was, that's my take, but I'll go with whatever it's like.
Okay, but I had my hand up.
You were speaking, I thought you were done.
No, but I had my hand up again before you joined. So maybe we should look around the room before we all start speaking, so we don't miss anybody. And there's no one. Okay, so I understand about not wanting to compare to the previous budget. But did I also hear you say we should just only, if we were comparing, only compare to the actual budget? So we were looking at previous years, just the actual budget and not the adopted budgets. Is that what I'm hearing?
We can do whatever you'd like, but I was saying what we actually received in revenue,
Uh-huh,
what we actually spent, not the budget. Those are different numbers,
okay,
right? But I can do it however you would like.
no, I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were recommending. So we should be comparing against the actual money that we receive. And is that usually towards the later part of the year?
Right, we know, right?
At the end.
At the end of the year, we know.
Okay,
So Anna?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't mind referencing a previous year, but it can be as an addendum or as an appendix, so that if you want to take a look at it for comparison's sake, then that's fine, but just for clarity's sake, I like the idea of referring to the actual budget, as you said, but I don't think we need to lose that comparison to the previous year, but it can be, just tagged to another, like an appendix or something. you know, for those who care to take a look at last year.
Okay. And I would say that actual makes more sense with the one I was talking about, because what you want is the actual number of international students, the actual number of out-of-state students, and we are projecting X, whatever, for the next year, see what, any clear picture.
So we'll rewrite the introduction.
Well, all of the assumptions could be looked at in terms of, well, and look at the FTS assumptions, for example. Credit FTS is projected to increase 1% fiscal year 24 compared
What page? Same.
He's on page 2.
Page 2. I'm still
It's on the
page-
screen,
it's up
so you
there
can
on
see it.
the- Yeah, in fiscal year 23-24 compared to projected. Now you're gonna say actual, right? FTS for 22-23. And it would be helpful just to say the numbers right there. You know, see what I mean? Credit FTS project was,
So you don't know what the starting, or-
10,100.
yeah, the starting or the landing place is
Yeah.
in this format, so.
yeah, yeah. Trustee Gallagher.
I have a question. How often do we increase the enrollment rate? I know we, according to this document, we just increased the enrollment rate for our international students. But do we increase the rate for our non-international students? And if so, how often do we do that?
We don't set those. But they're separate.
In-state.
In-state.
The state sets the rate, the $46 a unit? Okay.
But out-of-state students get the same rate as international.
And do we set that rate for out-of-state
Annually.
students?
Every year.
Okay, and but we just recently only increased the international, did we increase?
No, we increase both.
We
It's always
increased both, okay. Okay, thank you.
So any other comments on your?
So my takeaways here are on the assumption that we would use actual numbers wherever possible. Not a percent, not a 0.1 million, we would say $114,711 or whatever it is. No point anything, everything's total to the dollar. And then we would not use adopted budget from last year, we would use actual from last year and adopted budget for this year. Okay, so we'll rewrite the assumption. So here, this deficit factor 2.3 is actually 2.298.
My point in raising the point, 3 million, wasn't to say when once something is a million plus, we don't have to go through the dollar, all the way down, but it's just that percentage of a million, that's just not clear. Once you say something is 1.5 or 1.3 million, those can be unpacked, but they don't have to be like to the, it's just a little bit more clarity when you're talking about figures in the 100,000s versus a million. My point. We get a better grasp of 0.3 million or 0.7 million. The rest of them are kind of like 5.5 million. We get the idea. 5.9 million, you don't have to drag that all.
Okay.
That was the point I was raising. That's
Okay.
kind of clear. But it's otherwise, the picture in the assumptions is coming across, with some clarity.
Are there any other things in the introduction?
Later, I have a comment on the transfers here, but let's save it for that, okay.
Can I ask a question? Why did we create a budget that was too aggressive? Like, how did we get there?
Create a budget of what?
The statement on, number 2 on page 4 says the adopted budget, I know you don't want to talk about it, but the adopted budget of 2022-23 was too aggressive. Why did we do that?
Sorry, where was that?
On page 4?
They're at 3 and 2.
With regards to enrollment growth, non-resident tuition, right, that, so there was optimism that we would bring back students from, out of state. So they were doing marketing, other things to try to grow that.
Okay.
They said, when I got here, the assumptions were very aggressive for years. For
Okay.
international and out of state students.
Okay.
And they were built into our long range forecast, like 5% or even more. And because we had really come down during COVID. And we
Yeah,
thought,
I get
we'll go
all of
back.
that.
We'll go back. And so no one was foreseeing some of the other things that were happening, such as the cost of housing just exploding. Maybe some people were.
I mean, with cost of housing has always been there, but before COVID, it was hard to
Not
get a
like
house
now.
here.
Not like now. Now it's
true.
now it's a totally different thing.
I mean, were we looking at numbers? Like, how do we, I mean, Trustee Croninger, you obviously were here. Like, how do we get to the point where we're that aggressive with the budget?
2014, I believe, was the high point for our enrollment with international and out-of-state students.
Okay,
And that was a national phenomenon.
okay,
Everybody had a lot of those students. And then it started to drop. And in my opinion, and I raised it when we talked about the budget, we were too optimistic. So as far as I can recall, I haven't gone back to totally check it, and the numbers aren't always there to check. But I think we have an unbroken record of overestimating both of those numbers of students.
okay. We're not gonna continue that, right?
2014.
But we're not gonna continue that. That's not what we wanna do.
Well,
here.
Brian has ratcheted it down. Now, when we get to the 5-year, 6-year budget discussion, the budget projections, we got 15, almost 16 million on increased enrollment in those areas. And last I looked, we're down even from Brian's estimate for fall. We're not up, we're down. So it could be, we are still being too optimistic. Brian did a lot to bring it down, but I worry, these 5-year fiscal projections are sobering, and if we're still off by another 16 million, they're even worse.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We have modest growth in credit here, 1%. That may be too aggressive. It's in here, but that may be, we haven't grown 1%, for more than just a short period in a long time. And we have some, I can't remember what the growth is in international. We have that, and again, that may just be, I keep thinking, is it time for us to embrace the 8,000 FTS college, right? And think, no matter, because we've been trying, what is our future, right? And so be the best 8,000 FTS college we can be,
Yeah,
rather than keep planning on being 14,000
Right.
FTS college and having this same discussion that how do we miss that?
Well, I think part of it is about really getting a handle on how we schedule and how we look at the classes and the programs we're offering, the modality. Can a student come here during the day and finish during the day? Can a student come here at night and finish at night? You know, how do we do that? And I think that's something that, Vice President Villa Gomez is working on with the deans and they're going to work on it with the department chairs. Like obviously fall is in the books. And what we heard loud and clear over at the faculty in service the other day is faculty don't like it when their classes get canceled. Totally get that. And so what we have to do is rethink how we schedule to make sure that instead of canceling classes, we're adding classes because the demand is there. And there are lots of different ways to, you know, to slice and dice that. And I think it's, especially as we are looking at multiple modalities, which the college traditionally didn't do 3 years ago before COVID, you know, it's a different time. So I think that's going to help. And using different types of projection tools.
Yeah, Brian included some of that under the opportunities section of your presentation.
I did,
your
yeah,
board.
yeah.
I would add opportunities there for increasing our enrollment in online because you don't have a housing problem necessarily with online. And if we are a destination for people there, we can pick up FTEs without that undertow of housing. And the political, you know, I mean, there's a real concern about that in the community. So.
Yeah, just 2 points. As we were talking about the idea of embracing the 8,000 size small college versus the medium. One of the things I think that might be useful as a framework and a framing for that is that, you know, we know that not only post-COVID, but when the economy is as strong as it is, people tend to not go to community colleges. Community colleges have always thrived when the economy is bad because people are retooling and they're doing all these other things. So, you know, the fact that people are able to get decent paying jobs now, you know, after the Great Resignation, now people are coming back and they're, so that we're in this place where we embrace the small size, but with an eye towards wanting to be, you know, that medium size, but just really looking realistically, because I do think that you know, the economy is strong now. We don't know what it's going to be later, you know, so that obviously that ability to be a small college and a large college doesn't present hurdles for us in terms of recalibrating, but just in terms of a mindset, just understanding that for a while we may be in this small state because the economy is good and, you know, people are getting jobs as opposed to deferring that while they go get retooled or while they get training or something. So, you know, I think that's one way to kind of think about where we are right now as opposed to where we would like to be and where we're trying to be. And then the other point, Trustee Croninger, you had mentioned while we were talking, and I forgot exactly what it was. It just slipped out of my brain. But anyway, so that's the main thing I wanted to say about why we're where we are and how we can frame that. So we know that, you know, that it's not just us, but everybody's having this problem with enrollment numbers rebounding.
We have a particular situation that most colleges don't, which is that we are still approximately twice as large as an average community college for the size of our district. And that has to do with all of the non-in-district students. In other words, we're roughly half and half. And so I don't think we should feel badly about, you know, being a size that would be expected of us. But it could have to do with why we have been losing, because there are other social things, all kinds of other social things going on, not least among the housing crisis. And so
I remember the online, I was thinking more as we project of online being a really good place for us to be revenue generating and not have to deal with the housing situation, but also hybrid, because we don't want to do too much online because it discourages people from being on campus. We want people on campus so they can spend for the cafeteria and create that community that is a kind of self-generating multiplier, right? When people are on campus and they're, together. So, I think the online is absolutely great, but hybrid is a real way to kind of address that too.
So I agree, hybrid. We're just gonna have to make some tough decisions, it sounds like. Dr. Andrew Jonas, you mentioned the scheduling. Yes, if we are offering 4 of the same classes and 2 of them have below the number that we need to even make a profit, then we need to remove one of the classes. I mean, we just need to remove one of the classes because we can't afford to keep operating like that. That's not a sustainable process. So when we do start cleaning up our schedule, could we get like a not a quarterly report, but a report showing us where we began and where we are now, so we can, see, and then maybe see what the impact of that, because now we have, since we kind of rearranged some class schedules, now we have these classes and the class sizes are bigger.
I think there'll be a lot of comparative data. And part of it is data that none of us in this room can actually guess, because we need to know more about what students really want right now too. And I went to the open house upstairs today and was talking to a couple of students, and they both said, "Oh, we're so glad we're here in person." And one said, "Well, I have one class online, but I really wanted all my classes face to face." Now those were just 2 students.
Yeah.
But we've talked to other students who like a mix. And so I think that's what we're gonna find is that our schedule will probably be a little bit more diversified. But again, with an eye towards, if historical data shows that we only need 3 sections of this class and not 4 sections of this class, you start with the 3, but you get prepared that you might have to offer that 4th because the demand has grown for the 3. So what it does is it requires a little more forethought and planning on the scheduling end of it, which makes the back end of it, as we're trying to figure out where students are going, a little bit easier. And it really does address what faculty are frustrated about, which I totally understand. Having been an adjunct for the majority of my life, I know what it's like to prepare a class and then find out that it's getting canceled the day before, a week before, whatever it is. So it's really, but the class taking patterns for students are very much in flux. And so we have to just remain open to what the data is telling us and what are all the options out there. And there's not just one way to offer a class PE. There's not one way to offer a class face-to-face. So what are faculty thinking about, and how can we schedule it? We like to talk about the class being productive rather than making a profit, because that
I'm sorry.
communicates something different. Yeah, no, I know.
I'm
that's
kind of
okay.
business.
It's just
Pay for itself. is a
pay
better
for
way to
itself.
say it.
I think it's
Okay.
a better way. to
Sorry,
say
pay
it.
for itself.
That's okay. That's
right.
okay, yeah. It's one of those weird parts about the jobs that we do, because we are here to deliver education, but the state is really clear that we also have to do it like we're a business. And so we have to make that distinction, especially with our faculty association sitting right here.
My apologies. I'm top heavy in business law, but I will learn the language. All right.
Would you like to talk about the transfer?
My comment is later.
So today, I heard from our safety office that nearly all of our parking lots were at capacity.
Yes, they were this morning.
Very
I
close.
couldn't find parking.
So and then we're in the free parking period, you know, it's all, we start, we give people the opportunity to come to campus, and a few days later, they need to have a permit. My goal, if you add up parking, food service, and a store, it's $1.1 million that we give out of the general fund. And that is unusual. That's a COVID remnant.
Right.
Yeah,
And a lot of other places, don't have the store and the food service. They've just not had them. That our students will buy their books online or in someplace else. And we will not have any book. Again, it makes it a less of a campus experience for students. You're trying to get them here and so if I can get more people to buy parking passes, and I can have more people on campus to fund the store, or even to lease our empty space, that's the million, my first $1.1 million when I give back to the general fund is that one.
Thought you wanted to pay the driveway with the parking
There
fund.
you go. I would
Right.
love to, I would love to be able to do that. And we will have money if we start generating money this way. That's my hope.
So I was thinking about you highlighting this during the regular board meeting about us typically, community college doesn't have food service. And I mean, it just made me think of my college experience. When I transferred from a community college, my community college did not have a food service. We didn't even have food trucks. But when I transferred to Temple, they didn't really have a food service either. They just had an area, and it wasn't Temple's area. It was like the community built these, like it looked like a pop-up, but it was like it wasn't a building, but it looked like a kiosk, and they flip open their window thing, and there's like this media kitchen. So you had a burger kiosk, hot dog kiosk, taco kiosk, and so they had, and then across from that there were food trucks, and that was our food at Temple University, and it's still like that to this day. There's no cafeteria. So I was thinking, you know how we have that parking lot area diagonally from the cafeteria to the bookstore, you could have food trucks there. We could rent out the space. You could generate revenue like that with the food trucks.
There's not enough, I will tell you, we've had food trucks here and there's not enough foot traffic for them. There's not. In
But I
fact,
mean, just like one or two, just to say we have food on the
I-
campus. I'm
I
just
understand,
offering that
understand.
idea.
Yeah, and it's one of the comments from the other campuses right now. They have gone the food truck route and they have too little business to even keep a food truck. So, yes.
and if I can just offer that, one of the things we do have is a culinary program.
Right.
And back in the day, when, 40 years ago, the culinary program ran all the food service operations. However, that wasn't the best instructional model. So in 2002,
Mhm.
we separated the two. So you had food service and you had the culinary program. And there were, a second semester, the students were the back of the house in the cafeteria. And the meats class, they would get 200 chickens, they would dress 200 chickens, and then we did this internal sale of that chicken to the cafeteria, who then sold it out to the students. And then third semester, so there are ways to make this work. I think what we're struggling with right now is just getting that culinary program back up to the size it used to be. Because we used to have 75 students in that first semester. And then we would probably, after people realized that they weren't gonna be Emerald Lagasse on TV doing this, they were actually gonna have to cut 200 onions. We would go down to maybe 45 or 50. And for second semester, and then third and fourth semester, we had, 30 students. So we had back in front of the house GSV during the day and the gourmet dining room. But all along the way, there was interplay between that culinary program and the cafeteria. And that, if we can get that culinary program large again, if we can go back to that business model, there was not a transference to,
No,
from
no,
the
it was the
general
other way
fund.
around. We
It was
used
the
the
other
money.
way around, and whenever there was a shortage, like 2008 came along, instructional supplies were in short supply, well, lottery money can be used to buy food because it's a consumable. And so we were able to leverage lottery money as well as tip money to make it happen. So food is key, especially because unlike PCC, where I had a McDonald's, a Jack in the Box, an El Pollo Loco, a Fat Burger, and a Chick-fil-A that any student could walk to, right?
Across the street, off
Across the
campus.
street off campus and just literally across Colorado Boulevard. That's all you had to do. Here, you're not gonna walk across the
Never gonna
street
happen.
because you're gonna pay, $16 for 2 tacos. I love the tacos if you're listening, just saying. But that's a lot and students can't afford it. So I think we can get to the point where there, not only is there no transfer out, it's a transfer back.
How much time is it, I'm sorry, how much time is it gonna take us to build the culinary so that we don't have to keep transferring in?
Well, I'm 3 weeks into the job, so ask me in about 3 months.
Just to, relate a little bit to what, trustee Blackmore was saying is that I think one of the things that makes a little bit of the projection on that revitalization of the culinary, which I think is really something we should, jump into, is the fact that, the COVID now that people are going back to eating out, I think our dining out capacity as a city is something that we can maybe get some numbers on that'll help us move forward, because there are some battles about the parklets and State Street and, closing off the street for the dining because people had to create, these new outdoor eating, cafe style eating spaces. But I think that the Santa Barbara dining out experience is rebounding, but we don't know exactly how much. But I think there's some numbers we can get to help drive the culinary, but we won't know until we have some numbers.
Yeah.
And my idea about the bookstore, to be honest, I think it's too big of a space for a bookstore. I mean, I don't think we need a bookstore that's 2 stories. Look at look at their inventory sales, what's selling the most? Do we really need some of that stuff you can buy online? I was just told I didn't even know we had an SBCC app. You can buy it via the app. The swag, the apparel, whatever items we sell the most, we keep that and condense the space. So maybe that will cut down on utilities and utilize the space that is no longer the bookstore can be a new designated temporary area, since we're moving people out of these module buildings and stuff. Maybe that space can be their temporary location if we are still trying to relocate people. It's just an idea. But do we really need the downstairs part of the bookstore? I mean, when I go in there, I'm going for the swag and I'm buying a binder. Some of that stuff they could buy online.
Not saying you should keep or not keep, right? So what is downstairs is what keeping inventory. And so that's one. I'm sharing you with, so the person that works down there, that's part of our group services, is Cindy Rogers. Okay, so a couple of things are down there. You have offices down there where they do the work to do the ordering.
Okay.
Inventory is down there. It's also a place where they sell a lot of books to probably the competition to our bookstore here, right? Because another bookstore is so it's a place to go, right? You can probably promote that. That's an opinion. I'm just telling you what's down there. But the big thing that goes down there, this is what Cindy Rogers shared with me. There's a lot of tacit knowledge down there, which is students come in, how do you deal with problems that they have? It's sometimes the difference between a student leaving and student staying. That's what Cindy's told me. And so they understand the needs of the students. So there's more going on there than just books. I just want to share that, not taking one side or the other, right? So but it does seem like it's a basement kind of area, but there's a lot of activity there. I think that Cindy Rogers could speak more, eloquently and in a more articulate way about what goes on there, so that the board can be better informed, right? What the value proposition, if it exists down in the basement.
And students do have questions about books and you have people who kind of know which classes are, well, here's some, well, here's some of the used books, or here's, so they have an interaction with the students in a way that you don't have with just the merch part. So,
Right.
yeah, I think
I
that's.
think it's
a
where they
good
go
point.
to get answers about things that are like not even bookstore related. So they'll go down there and they'll have dual enrollment, will make the way down there as well. There's some packets to pick up. So, not saying.
Oh, so it's a multi-purpose kind of
Yes,
area.
not saying you couldn't co-locate it on one floor, not that I wouldn't be with Brian, right? That's his area. I'm just only letting you know what is down there.
Okay.
I've been to campuses that pretty much took a classroom and made it into their bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like they,
Took a class and made it into.
it's, you're right. I'm of the opinion, let's build that business.
Mhm.
I
And
think that,
Starbucks.
I think it's a beautiful space. It was remodeled maybe about 8 years ago. I think if we have people on campus, we can make that a reason to be here.
Okay.
It's got a nice deck for coffee and something to eat. It's got nice things to buy. With the right amount of foot traffic, it can be a very. Some of the bookstores on major universities have a corner for Apple computer. You can buy an Apple computer there. You
Yeah.
can buy bicycles. They can buy electric bicycles there. That's how I envision that. Is have it be a place where a student would,
Okay.
even if they're buying it from a shop in town, we can have that. Have it be a center of people.
I would just say that I think that the issues relating to contributing to the campus store and to food service, even parking, they started to surface before COVID. And I think they reflect changing retail, and things like that, particularly the store, Amazon and leasing and all of that. So it's a matter of being both creative and flexible.
People are still spending money in buying things. We just have to figure out how we can be the place.
No, I'm all for it. I'm trying to just provide some suggestions so it can pay for itself. Because I use the right terms and time.
We agree.
Okay.
So can we move on to the
Yes, it's
general fund or I usually mostly focus on the unrestricted
What page are we?
on page 7. That's
The general unrestricted fund?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the last few years of the general fund. The projected actuals there
Mm-hmm.
showing a deficit of 1.968 right here. You can have it. Now, we went into, June, if you will, projecting a deficit of now here. Show deficit for several months.
650.
Yeah, something like that, 650. And so what happened at year end, so the difference between this 1.9 and 650, we lost about, almost $900,000 in a deficit factor. They just reduced our revenue. We have a reconciliation that shows you all the different things that happened. But we also, then we closed the books. And so, we were off a few $100,000 from what we had estimated. And so we ended the year having used $2 million, almost a fund balance, right? We start the year with 36.2 million and we end the year with 34.2 million. So we used just short of $2 million in fund balance. We had not projected that, right? We had projected to use less than $1 million. But the state, used last year to, they told us in June. Then in this year, this is pretty much the same budget as we showed you in the tentative, and I have a reconciliation below. But the state did reduce our revenue 2.2 million.
Yeah.
And so that really grew our deficit. We had projected going in that we would use about $500,000. Right, so if you look at the two, then what's that, $4.5 million was the use of fund balance, both last year and the projected use this year. One of the other things to keep in mind is that last year, our budget for salary and benefits was we took all of the staff that we had and we fully allocated their salaries and their benefits, and it was in the budget. This year, as you recall, since we've been experiencing so many years of salary savings and significant stuff, we actually reduced that number. We budgeted for everybody, and then we reduced that about $1.5 million or something.
I remember that.
I think that was right, $1.5 million in salary savings. Is that what we put in the budget?
For this, vacancies, yeah.
Yes, and so a lot of the savings that we have sort of seen in prior years, which shows the, you know, the difference between our budget and how we end, that's, that cushion has gone away. So,
Oh,
right, we don't, because we
so we hired people. to help.
remember how I said before, we can save the same, spend the same money twice?
Yeah.
We did. We spent it on the salaries, and then we said, not all of it's gonna happen, and then we spent it again. We put it in the budget again. And that was through our budget discussions, how we ended up, that's when you put salary savings, and that's what you end up doing.
I'm missing something. Okay, so we had $1 million plus because of salary savings. We weren't hiring, and then I don't understand how we spent the money twice. Because we haven't hired all those people yet. We're still hiring, so I'm
I'm
missing, I'm
saying,
sorry.
if you look
I'm
at
missing
the, if you look at the salaries and benefits on 40-day right here, 48, 27, and 27. Those numbers are made up of individual positions,
Right,
what their cost is, whether or not they're gonna get a bump during the year or not, and then their benefits.
Mhm.
So it's a list of people and what they cost.
right,
And then we said, about 2% of the time during the year, in total, those positions will be vacant.
Mhm.
Right? And so we will have savings from that, those three numbers,
right,
right, at 1.5 million. And then we said, because you can see we still we're still over our, our revenue, we still have even before we were at $478,000 of deficit, and now it's 2.5,
Mhm.
right? So all things being equal, we would show a $1.5 million surplus.
right,
It's not,
because,
because we budgeted in these other places. Right? Do you want, is that, no?
because we gave people like that COLA and that salary increase, or what? I mean, I'm missing something.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't couch it this way, but if I say, here's all the things I'm gonna do, and I expect not to spend $1.5 million, right?
Right,
Then I should show a savings at the year end of my projection at least. But I don't, I'm actually spending all of that. So
On
before,
other
when we said the salary savings or we would put a negative number down here. Right, but that's not there, it's gone because it's been budgeted again in these other lines.
Because there were other expenses elsewhere. So rather than just having those salary savings
right, we
kind of
spent that
in
money.
there, yeah,
somewhere
as a
else.
cushion,
Okay, we
we
allocated
actually
it elsewhere.
knew we have $1.5 million through salary savings. So rather than just having it there as a cushion, we have these other needs.
Right,
We're gonna use them on those other things.
right,
So,
right. We reallocated
yeah,
that salary savings. But, and so what that means is that, well, yeah, that part is clear, but I don't understand the spending it twice thing.
Why
I
did
get
we
it,
do
I get
that? Cause we know we have to hire people.
It's a philosophical way of budgeting, and
Mm.
it's
I get it.
what, some
Philosophy.
people, some organizations do it every year, some places never
PCC
do.
was doing that.
Well, I mean, I'm just used to when you create a budget, an itemized budget, and you have budget itemized lines. If you say, okay, the salaries, we're gonna spend $5 million. And if you don't spend all the $5 million, that money stays right there. You don't go spend the $5 million for sports if it's for salaries and budget. That, I'm used to budgets like that. I'm not used to just moving, but now unless there's a vote or discussion about moving money from this budget item line to this budget item to be used for something else. That's what I'm used to. And I just don't remember us saying, we're gonna take that savings and use it to spend over here. I don't remember that.
Just wanted to, if it helps to add, so, we're right, to express, it's philosophical, it's a budgeting technique. So here's some extreme examples, right? So one example, you have $100 budgeted for salaries, right? And you get, this actually happened, so this happened through the whole COVID pot, right, period. Yeah, we budgeted $100. You have all this hurt money come in and
Right.
with our track. Then you get to the end of the year, and like, okay, so we should break even. No, actually, you ended up with $10 extra.
Right.
Right? You're like, oh, well, what happened? The vacancy. So I think it's important to either you flag that as that's savings for vacancies, and you can't touch that to use for salary increases,
Right?
because that did happen. I'm telling you right now, it got muddled. And certain groups, when they saw that savings, said, I want that. Well, no, you can't, because that's not your money.
Right.
But for example, some of the increases that were given out, which I'm not giving an opinion whether it should or not. Technically, they gave away some of the fiscal services money. Because we couldn't hire, we probably gave away about 100,000 or 200,000 contributed to other people's projects. And it wasn't fair, right? Because someone else gets to benefit from my vacancies. So how do you tag that, right? How do you flag that so that when we get to the end of the year and we're presenting to everyone here, the board, what happened? So a technique, to Brian's point, is why don't we give everyone, like fiscal service, I get to have my money for my purpose, right? If we get to the end of the year and I use it, fantastic. And if I get to the end, and everybody uses it, fantastic. That means that the vacancy rate was 0. Great. Okay, but what if you get to the position, right? What if you get to a position where I'm 70,000 of vacancies? Why should someone get that for their increases, right?
Exactly.
Their benefit. So the way that I can annotate that in a budgetary way is, hey, that 70,000, that's connected to the 1.5 that we projected as vacancies. Just a technique. Could be many ways to say it. We could actually get that vacancy rate and apply it across boards. We could do that. But it's one way to protect the integrity of every department so that it's not, but by the way, that's a lack of equity. That's a lack of equity on a department level for someone to chew through my vacancy. And I did have a lot of vacancies. I did other groups. It's unfair for someone to take my vacancy. I'm not personalizing, I'm just giving an example, of course. If there's passion, it's for a different reason. So to Brian's point, I just want to support what he said. It's a technique, it's a philosophy. How do you show that?
All right, well, thank you for that. It certainly is clarifying for me. But the other thing I also know, I just wanted to kind of understand, I think what threw me off was the spending it twice as opposed to the reallocation, because, we did have this debate about, what were we gonna do, with this money? So I do remember those conversations that we had. In terms of, taking your vacancies and then having an inequity because we gave it to some other salary. One of the things I do know about budgeting is that, particularly having been on a budget committee for 5 years at UCSB when we were in the worst, budget disaster of 2004 and 5, those years are really awful. Anyway, one of the things I do know is that not all funds roll over, and if you don't spend them, they disappear. And so it's not that people taking your money and allocating to somebody in an inequitable way, but funds don't automatically roll over and you have it again next year because you didn't spend it. If you don't spend it, the perception is you didn't need it, it goes away. And, so that's why it's really important for that budget philosophy, to be one that I think was one of the discussions that we had.
Yeah. I think the other thing, sorry, go ahead.
I don't recall us having a discussion about taking it was either a range of 1 million or 1.5 million. I distinctly recall hearing Dr. Murillo say, because we have so many vacancies, we have this much money that's not being used because we have this many vacancies. I don't recall us having a discussion saying, well, because we have this much money, because we have these vacancies, we're gonna use it over here. I don't recall that discussion.
It didn't happen that way because it wasn't properly flagged, but it did happen. It did, from a monetary counting the dollars, that's exactly what happened. Because we got to the end of the year and we said only this much is the pool of money available. But to be quite, anyone that tracked the number, this is all public, right? Anyone could have done the math and say, wait a minute, you gave away more than what was allocated for that purpose. Why? Because you had vacancies. And that is something that I think was a reason why we said, rather than let it all get commingled, let's identify what we think the vacancy rate is. Because if there's any savings at the end of the year, like what if we do have the 1.5? Is it proper to then allocate the 1.5 to salaries when it had nothing to do with salaries, had to do with vacancies? Do you get your savings and roll it, right? The board has to decide that. Do you give it as a one-time or is it ongoing? Because once you give a rate, it's ongoing, right? And so that's the nature of doing this vacancy. And by the way, Dr. Murillo, she actually even said that in prior presidencies that she's led, that was a technique they did as well, which is why we started to go down that path. That they always kind of flagged it so that you would never commingle that in a possible negotiation.
Yeah, thank you. And just one last thing, I do remember, I understand what trustee Glenmore is saying. You know, we did have a discussion about that, the leftover, not leftover, but that unspent funds because of the salary savings. It wasn't in that same conversation, we talked about this, so I do remember it exactly the way you are. But when we got into the salary negotiations, as Rudy was saying, we did see that we had, you know, extra funds that we were then talking about with trying to address our livable wage issues that we have been putting off for a while. So those two things didn't happen at the same time, but the end result was, but again, the point was our philosophy about our budget. So that's what I was.
Can we move to the reconciliation?
Yes, I brought that one up. So this is the difference. The tentative budget is over here, on the left-hand side. This is what we brought to you in June.
What page is this one? Oh, that's the next page, page 8. Got it.
The tentative budget on the left, showing the $478,000 use of fund balance, very modest. Then at year end, we changed the beginning balance because we were going to end the year with 35 million, but we ended up spending $1.3 million more last year than we had projected in the budget. Remember, just short of 900,000 of that is the reduction of revenue. The rest of it is closing the books. And we still haven't been audited, so our numbers are still unaudited, but I think we're pretty close. And so we're finished closing, and we ended up at $1.3 million less than that. So that takes away fund balance. So that, right, 1.3 less. So you can see we started 35.1. I'm sorry, we started 35.8. And now we reduced it. And so our beginning balance now is 34.26. Beginning balance for this year. Yes, ma'am.
In the 1.3, there we have the 900,000 deficit factor.
Correct.
Okay.
And the things that we had not anticipated when we closed. Those two
About
things.
400,000 more in expenses and 900,000 less.
Deficit.
Correct, exactly.
Thanks.
So there's some big things that happened at year end, we're projecting what's gonna happen at year end and who's paying what bills this year. And so that's the next one is no change to fund balance, but we found out that our local revenues, mostly property tax, in fact, I think all of it's property tax, were more than we projected. And so it just reduces, it's a zero-sum game as our local revenue for apportionment goes up, the state goes down. So again, no change to fund balance, it's just a differentiation there. FTS allocation, we declined in enrollment last year, right? We declined. And the first year, it's starting to reduce, it's a 3-year averaging, and this is our first crack at that. So we lost $480,000 because we declined in enrollment. Right? So that reduces our fund balance by 480,000. The next, the deficit factor, 2.4 million, 2,386. This is the money the state said they would give us in the budget, and they just now have said, and keep in mind, this is their initial one. Our revenues could be fine, right? And we get that money back. It could be a lot worse. So we have 3 more chances for them to tell us how much we're gonna get.
Yep.
But their initial one says it's 2.3 million. Other revenue adjustments, there's some minor things that we adjusted, almost ministerial and local revenue, 68,000, so that reduces 68,000. The salary adjustments, now keep in mind, when we did the tentative budget, we were trying to estimate how much retroactive pay for a full year was gonna be for everybody, plus all the new hires we were doing, who was gonna actually be hired. We had like 20 of them in the queue and 17 actually. Anyway, we had overestimated what our cost was by 792,000. And it breaks out right here. And so you can read, if you add the negative 1.8, 1.3 higher and classified. In total, we saved 792,000. So that adds back to fund balance. So once the dust settled on all of the retroactive pays, we found out who we did actually hire for this year. It was to the improvement of almost $800,000.
Okay, good.
Then we had some other very minor changes that we made. Again, almost ministerial things that we didn't know that we got right. That reduced it 33,000.
Didn't know that we got right.
Yeah, here the contingency allocation, we had a contingency in the budget, which we allocated up in this area here. Right over here, the appropriation of contingencies. Oh, no, this is it. This is the salary savings. And now we made an estimate and put it in each one of these. So the 1.5 million is our salary savings. We said, I want to say it's like 2% of salaries. And so Rudy has said how much of that goes in, and these are on a macro level. So on any one department, it still shows what the individual departments are costing for each individual position. But on a macro level, we're saying at the end of the day, we're going to have $700,000 in salary savings in faculty, 397 in staff, and 423 in benefits. So there's no impact at the bottom because we just allocated that up amongst the different categories. Then if you take all of those together and you add them up, that is the budget we presented. So we did not increase, and this is a difference again this year than I think in the past. There have been other times here where people have said, I want this, I didn't get in the budget, and so there's been a whole group of things that were added to the budget as in addition to the other changes. And so the adopted budget was not only, here are the changes in revenues and the ministerial things that we're fixing. We also realized that through the 4-month budget process, we forgot to budget for this or that or whatever. Believe me, there's a list of those. And you recall, we brought those to you separately because I want that process to be pretty deliberative going forward, that we never change the budget in any context. Once you have the tentative budget, that is your budget for the year, and anything that changes from it is either in something like this, where we show you what's happening, or specifically we ask you, or here's a new program, we're thinking we need to do it, and you have the ability to approve or to disapprove. And that's what we tried to do, and that's what I will always try to do.
It's not a big difference, but I'm wondering if you go down to the bottom of non-labor adjustments, you've got 34,229,647, and then you go up to the top of contingency allocations and you have a slightly different number.
Oh, yeah, 263.
260.
They don't, these are not, I think it adds up across. Each one of these has its own,
But aren't you bringing the bottom one up to the top of the next one?
only for this 34. See, it's the same beginning balance. So here, we made a beginning balance adjustment here, And that's our beginning balance all the rest of the way across.
Mhm.
And all we're doing is saying what that effect of that one is on beginning balance. Then you take them all across and they equal 2.5. You add all the different changes.
Yeah. That does.
And so it still is what is our new beginning balance? We can present this any other way you want. That's why, that's the methodology of this spreadsheet.
But the new beginning balance is the 34, 263, 347.
That is the beginning balance this year.
Got it.
We think we'll use during the course of this year, 2.5 more than, we'll use 2.5 of our fund balance, we'll end here at 31.7.
Okay.
Right.
And just so we're clear, we're using one-time money for ongoing expenses.
Right, so if you think of the terms of the overtime, there's sometimes you add to fund balance and sometimes you take from fund balance. If you think of a graph, where your costs are kind of going up over time at some, 3.5%. Your revenues may go up 4 1 year and 2 another.
Right, right.
And so I had this graph before where I colored one side where it says contribute to fund balance and the bottom is use fund balance. Now, this is an extreme example because using $2 million is certainly nothing we would ever plan to do. Remember, our plan was 400,000. That's a very modest use of fund balance. Because anytime you spend any of that 35, you're deficit spending, right? And so even if you're transferring it out to another fund to do it, you're still deficit. So you'll always have, in theory, you'll build to a sizable and appropriate level of reserves. And then you'll build fund balance and use fund balance all the time, every year, because that is your shot so that you can over time react. And then at least that's my experience in doing it.
But that's not the way it's set. We have set it up so that we have a board policy designated reserves for emergency use, things that you do not anticipate. And then we have had recently, because of HERF primarily, an undesignated reserve, which we had hoped to use for one-time types of projects or even funding ongoing, endowing ongoing things.
Students and.
But with our 5-year fiscal projections, we're all using the undesignated fund, and by the time you get to that 6th year, which we don't normally do, but we're 6.6 million into our emergency funds.
Right,
So
right.
we're all in the red, the graph you're talking about for the next years, foreseeable years right now. That's not to say that we're not gonna try to change that, but
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
it's a
It's,
concern.
remember, they took $5 million from us.
Almost, right.
Actually 10 if you take out the revenues that were, in July. So it's right. This is not a good picture. We did not anticipate that we would be there. It's not.
I have a question.
So-
I had my hand up twice.
Okay.
So you had mentioned that we have a policy that states what about our money?
We have a minimum designated reserve, and that is discussed on basically page 23.
And that's a
We'll get to
policy.
that. Yeah, it's a board policy on our reserve. And the minimum designated reserves, the descriptive introduction for that is basically that unanticipated expenses. So we're talking about earthquakes, fires, things that you could not have predicted that are bad that happened to you.
And is it a certain percentage or an actual amount?
We'll
It's right up there.
Here, I have it
It's right
there.
there.
It's in the book on page 23, where,
And we call that designated reserve.
Okay, I
So
just-
there's a,
because I didn't see board policy on the page, that's why.
Well,
no, it's not. This is
it's
just
not,
a,
it's not referenced there, but it is
Okay.
grounded in board policy.
So the general
as-
fund number 11 is the board policy.
yeah,
Got it. Thank you.
so, I'm sorry, the state requires 5%.
Well,
here.
it doesn't so much require it as it tells you that they will come in and do your budget for you if you don't have it.
That is correct.
Yeah, the
And-
take
and
over.
it's-
Form of
it's- yeah,
requirement.
It's a sign of, real in extremis sort of
Yeah,
thing. The board additional is 18 million, so the total reserve at the end of the year, 24 million. Keep in mind, this is based on the level of spending,
Uh-huh.
so 24 million. The undesignated is, this is the, you know, what I was saying, this is the. This is it, I mean, we've used half of our fund balance and, you know. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's requires a complete rethinking, and then when you look at some of the trends, you know, high school enrollment, our enrollment, where the state is financially. It's, there are a lot of red flags. Our 40% students who don't live here. There are our unused space, our in the classroom efficiency.
Yeah.
All of these are data
right, right.
that tell us that we really need to. We have our work cut out for us. It takes all of us working together to turn this around. But we'll challenge.
Cornelia had her.
Yes. Thank you. So I have actually two questions. I
A little
would,
louder because we've got this.
Oh, in the back.
corner. Yeah.
okay, so the first question is on the contingency allocation. I would like to know what was the basis on how to allocate the 1.6 million on these 3 line items?
What page are you on?
The reconciliation.
In the contingency, on the reconciliation sheet. My
Yeah, because we're moving around a little
I
bit.
have that still in
Have-
front of me.
That's okay, okay.
That is the first
Yeah,
question.
page 8, yeah.
I think page 11, is that,
That's 11.
or page 8,
Yeah, that's right.
8 out of 10.
Here we go.
So in the second to last column, we have a contingency allocation of 3 line item numbers and adding to 1.6 million. My question was, what rationality could we use to allocate them? And specifically because we see in 2.4 salary adjustments that we have 2 line items that we are showing significant savings, 1 line item where we show more. So why would the contingency allocation not necessarily reflect those directions? That's my one question. And the other question is, in the adopted budget, for the local revenue, we have a significant amount for international students. And as always, we have to make, for the tentative budget, an estimate about how many international students will show up, right? So we are now almost pretty much at the level, I would say, knowing that at least for the fall, we know how many international students we have. Did our estimate from earlier in the summer hold?
No, I think we're a little bit,
No, we're under.
Is that,
it's not reflected.
is not reflected?
It's not reflected. No, we have not changed. Our credit enrollment is slightly less than we had anticipated. We did not change that as well. We're still, I mean, we have not, the only changes in our revenues are the ones that I outlined here. We have not changed our other assumptions.
Can you say slightly? What is the dollar amount about slightly less for the international students?
I don't know.
And
I don't.
shouldn't we include that potential?
Yeah, if you know, if that's the direction that I'm given, I will do that. We did not do that. We only, again, you know, this is a week old or whatever, right? We'll know more tomorrow. I'll know more in a month. But no, the answer is the only changes are the ones that we went over here. Everything else is exactly the same as what we went into in June.
Now, that's partly why it's helpful to have the assumptions break out the numbers, because what we see on the enrollment reports is that in units for international plus out of state, we're down 5.4%. And in headcount, we're down 7.86%. That's the units that matter in terms of
Right.
what we get paid. But I don't know how to take that number and, you know, I think we had anticipated an increase of some amount and say, okay, what's happened?
We also, well, we remember our rates went up 11%,
Oh,
Right.
so I
That's
don't
right.
have the numbers in front of me, but, yeah. Yes, we could make this more accurate. We could look at the numbers, today. We're smarter about what is our enrollment than we were
Right,
a week ago. Yes, but no, we have not. And Rudy, again, this is just an estimation,
No, now it's, if you go back to what would be the first column, it's just a
Percentage?
proportionate, distribution of the
Okay.
1.5 based on that first column during the budget. Since we based the 1.5 vacancy on those numbers.
Got it.
Just, you can take the ratio, that's all it is, just the application of the ratio.
Okay.
We put them into a holding area.
it is not an expectation. This is just trying to say, if on average, we are 2% vacancies from the time we lose a person to get the new person in, on average, that's what it will cost, so
right.
the whole thing is just the net overall. But if you would like us, when we bring the adopted budget back to the board in September, if you would like us to have a revision of revenues based upon our latest enrollment numbers, keep in mind, that's one semester. Now, in international students, I don't know if they change that much one semester to another,
Go, I'll let you finish.
but, you know, again, we'll know, you know, as with all of our budget numbers, we, you know, because every month we bring you a projection as to what we're thinking. In terms of what we're gonna, how we're gonna end, at least we want to have. So yes, if that's the direction of the committee to make that, you know, adjustment, we'll give it a shot. It will be another estimate.
Wanted to just give some more context on the revenue, how that came about. It's actually, there's some tie outs back to the state apportionment. So we start off with our best guess, kind of what we're talking about here. We go through, but as you get to about July, the advanced apportionment comes out from Chair's office,
Right.
Schedule R, Exhibit R. And what we do at that point is that we true up to that number, because that right there tells us what they're saying is your exact number. And what they use is they use the previous, I think P2 number, Brian, I think, right? It's like a P2 number. And they even told us in a budget workshop, that's what we use. Your current numbers may be different, but we're gonna give you a portion based on that. So our goal has been, at least the past couple cycles, is to make sure that revenue ties to the dollar to the advanced portion. Now, we could deviate from that. If one possibility would be, if we think we're going down, we could be conservative and bring it down, right? We could do that. It'd be pretty risky to go the other way.
Right.
So that's all I can tell you, is that I can at least tie that revenue dollar to an exhibit that the Chancellor's office put out. And we've already also confirmed it off their calculator that they have. So that's the rationale behind it, right or wrong.
Yeah, it's my understanding that exhibit is basically now their first estimate and they're gonna be changing. So, yeah. Our estimates, to me, would be based on data that we have in hand. But I do recognize that spring is different from fall.
Yeah, spring
And
is
that
different.
complicates the idea of making an adjustment yet. I don't know.
So my question is, do we have a way of kind of generalizing the difference between fall and spring because of either persistence, you know, either students continue or they drop out? Are the numbers better in one semester than the other?
Spring is usually smaller
Spring
overall,
is smaller.
but
Okay.
sometimes it has an increase in out of state and international.
Okay. Thank you.
And then there's summer.
And then
And
there's
then there's some,
And
yeah.
the summer has changed. Now we have 1 year of history, and I will tell you, at least anecdotally from the bookstore and the food service, it was light.
Very likely.
And now our summers is a 10-week program instead of the 2 summer sessions, right? Yeah, we went to one.
right, but I think there are differing weeks within the 10 weeks. So there are some 10-week sessions, but I believe there are classes that are in other configurations that fall within the 10 weeks.
Okay.
So it's not the only way that we offer the classes. Okay.
Okay.
So a quick question I think I have relative to the food services fund and the child development fund.
What page are we on?
11 and, wait a minute, not 11.
Food
Oh,
service.
11 and 12.
11 and 12.
Here we are, I have it up here.
So what I'm noticing is from the tentative to the final here, we have more expenses, same revenue, more expenses for food service. And I think I calculated that as about 182,000 more in expenses. And child development, on the other hand, seems to be better off with an additional 200,000 over the tentative.
Okay,
So to me, it made sense perhaps to not give child development 100,000 instead of 200,000 and give food services that 100,000. I mean, it's a shifting depending on the latest estimates of where they will both end up.
okay.
In round. But I'm just suggesting you look at it. It's not, these are not huge numbers.
This is the 200 here we're transferring in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Child development,
And
and you're saying they're gonna end
yeah, the
76
tentative,
more than they.
well, in the
Here's
tentative, it
600
was,
here, and they're gonna eat up there, so you're
Yeah.
saying put 800, so my hope is make that 600 go away.
no, I know that.
Yeah, but we're not there yet.
But we're not
there
there yet. We're not there in this budget.
So,
See,
trustee Carlton, looking at where we
They
are.
have 47,000 left. Now they're gonna have 247,000.
Right.
So if you give them 100,000 left, they're still ahead.
Yeah.
And this is a program that I would like to expand, but I'm not trying to.
We need more space for
discuss
that.
So
Okay.
my feeling also is that as we go through the year, we don't necessarily need to make these transfers
Mm,
at the beginning of the year. I don't know when we do make the transfers, but you see how they do, right? And our estimate here, take food service at 600,000. Well, we want them to do well. At the end of the
Yeah.
year, we may like to transfer them 40,000 or 140,000. We wouldn't go over 600,000, but it'd be really nice if, our goal was to, keep them above 500,000 or something in fund balance, because a lot of that fund balance is gonna be like inventories.
mm.
Yeah, so but reduce that as we can during the year, because I think if we looked at last year's budget for last year, our budget was 650, we ended up giving them 625, or adjusted budget, we were close, we may have adjusted that down during the year. But the only transfer over there to these other funds like this, what they actually need,
Right.
because they'd rather have it in a unrestricted general fund.
It's another way of saying that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably so.
Ruby has the same. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm excited, because we were just talking about the board, Lisa, who just about this very topic. So, just for the kind of edification of everyone here, in accounting land, the board approved, what, 3.9, right, Brian? I'm trying, I don't have it in front of me, last year, or the 22-23 budget, right? And so the board said, okay, that's the max you can have a transfer, that's it. And so, Lisa, who's been around for 20 years, I think, she keeps us to it, no more, no less. So if you go back to the child center, I want to give you an example of what we do in accounting land. Back to trustee Carpenter's point. So we had 69,257. And we had transferred 260. We're actually, so they got more than what they needed. We're gonna bring that back to UTF. They only need to break even. And that happened in a couple funds, but there's other funds are a little bit higher. at the end of the day, the net change is negative 5,400, so we're kind of short, but that's okay, we're still gonna only transfer what the board
Right.
approved.
What the word-
Yeah, and that goes back to what Trustee Carpenter is saying, like, do they really need 200,000? We're gonna be watching it, and it's food service, they need it a little bit less. I'm sorry, I think they need a little bit more, but,
Right.
sorry. Somebody needed less. I think it was,
Child
development
yeah,
less.
Child development.
one of them needed less, so we were balancing out, but I think what I thought was really great is that with the dust settling, we're pretty close. to What people needed, just
That's
a little bit
That's
of
good.
dollars.
That's good.
So let me go back. Did I understand that you want us to adjust the international and non-resident revenue for next month?
Or
Or are we
just,
good to leave it for now?
for next month, just to include it maybe, if it's not a big deal to include
Maybe
it.
a separate chart that just says, here's where we are right now, it's fall only.
With actual numbers.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have actual numbers.
Oh.
We have one, I mean, this is enrollment.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
the first week of school, right?
They got
All we know
students
is-
drop.
We don't know numbers. All we know is, the only number we know is how many are enrolled today,
Okay.
right? We don't know what our revenue is gonna be.
Right.
We don't know how long, this is an estimate from.
I was just gonna say, isn't it different for international out of state? When did they pay for their units?
Well,
Does anyone here, I have numbers
I-
here, because I think, Trustee Garner, you have a great point. Last year, we did, 'cause I heard part of the conversation on right here. We were a little bit aggressive. I don't know if anyone answered the question why. That was like the best guess based, so, maybe, Rolla, she goes out and talks to the marketers and right, they gave her, but we may have known, I don't know, I don't remember the data at the time, but we were, I think, I have it numbers here, we were into the budget last year, we were using numbers 600 for international, 540 for non-resident. It's 600, 540. What we ended up doing was a lot less. I think we ended up going down to 530, 340.
We did, that was our.
And that was huge, right? Well, international, maybe not as much, 600 to 530, but for sure the out of state.
Out of state was really three.
So we went, so the other one, the two numbers are, sorry,
These are our-
second screen here. What is it, 600 and 540, those are the
Uh-huh.
two.
Uh-huh.
Last year,
Uh-huh.
at this time, 600 and 540.
Uh-huh.
What ended up happening was we ended up with 530 and 340. So
And that was last year.
So, correct. Yeah, so
Wow.
that out of state really took a hit.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big one, which is why you didn't have that $3.1 million swing, that hurt. And had we identified, no, Trustee Carney, that's your point, should we do something earlier? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, my question is, with credit, what you were describing, Brian, is absolutely the case, we have to go to census, for example. But with international, there is no census issue, so that's why I
Right.
was saying, when did they pay? If they drop out later, have they already paid, or is there a time period like?
well, that's where census would be important, because if they drop out
That's just,
before census, they're dropping out, so they would get a refund.
oh, they.
Yeah.
Yeah,
International and out of state? I don't know.
I don't think we keep their money if they.
You have it, there's
before
a
census.
drop,
I think
drop ad period.
Read it
Right,
in-
but-
in
but-
state, so
Well,
I'm just not sure.
But
whether-
it's also about when you have a W on your transcript
Right.
versus it doesn't show up on your transcript.
Okay,
Yeah, so it might be that they get a percentage of
Oh,
it
okay.
back,
Yeah, prorated,
but I think we prorate it, but we wouldn't keep it all
right,
if they
That's what I
dropped
was
before
wondering.
census.
right.
But you asked a different question, which is very important, and that is, have they paid? And that will be something that I follow up on, because that was something we needed to clean up at that they were allowed to create bills going forward, and they really do need to.
So let me, I have a suggestion. What if we were to adopt the budget as it is? We will find out when the best date is to determine the number of non-residents and out-of-state students, no
Mhm.
matter what that date is. And then we'll say, what is that number for this semester in relation to what we usually end the year with,
Mm,
right? And we'll make that same determination and we'll adjust the budget at that point.
mm.
I like that.
Adopted budget, we'll have an adjustment, and that will raise or lower our revenue based upon that number, and we'll do it as early as we can.
I like that.
That's good.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll find those two things out, and then we'll make some, it'll be an estimate again, but it'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
more accurate than.
Then,
what we're
yes.
used to. Yes. Okay, good.
Thanks for asking that question, Cornelia. Got us into that disaggregation mode, so we can figure
Yeah,
out
very
specifically.
important.
Yeah,
Well, it is when you go look at our 6-year,
yeah,
Oh, it's,
huge.
keep in mind that one of the things that we're dependent upon is not only out of state and international, out of area. Right? It'd be nice if we, I know we don't probably have that, but that's another one.
Yeah.
I think we ought to start really
Out of
looking
state.
at, saying, how much of that 40% are we capturing?
Mm.
Because again, that's critical to us.
You're talking about the out-of-state students?
No, I'm
Yeah,
talking
out of
about the ones
area, the
from
ones that are in like
in
LA.
California, they
Oh.
show up just like a regular credit FPS, right? But they're, that, because if our local K-12, enrollments are going down. And we're so dependent upon this 40% to come from international, out of state or just out of area. And we're looking closely at international and out of state. Maybe we should also, I'm
Get out
not
of
sure how we
area.
do it,
Yeah, yeah.
to start to look more closely. Again, give us this earlier information.
A little more
say,
precise.
Is that something, rather than waiting until the first quarter, the end of the first semester, to say, oh, yeah. Good or bad.
I have a question. Our enrollment numbers, that includes our dual enrollment?
They're not, they haven't registered yet.
No, but I'm just asking, does that,
Yes, it does.
okay, because
Yeah.
we're in that pilot program. And so maybe we should start to see an impact of more enrolled students, local students, if we're in that that pilot program where they trying to have every student graduate with at least 12 units. So hopefully we should see some increase in enrollment numbers from our local students.
I think that's the goal and that's the work that's happening between the college and Santa Barbara
Mhm.
Unified in particular with the
Mhm.
grant that that
Yeah, the
Just hired it, that
$500,000, right?
Yeah.
We have had interim reports from time to time on, in district and in California, but out of district students. But they have varied, and I don't know how quickly they can determine it. I have always wanted our enrollment reports to come out every day to make that distinction, because they
Right,
look
right.
all together.
Who are our customers?
Right.
Know who your customers are, and
Yeah.
you'll be
Right.
smarter about what you're, how you're gonna play. So if my takeaway so far, in the introduction or the assumption, to be more precise with some of the numbers, be more explicit as to what the adjustments are.
Yeah, under a million.
Not relating things to the adopted budget of last year,
Right.
but actuals of last year.
Mhm.
And then we will leave the budget as it is in
Mhm.
terms of our revenue, and we will, as early as possible, make an adjustment to our international.
Mhm.
once we have the solid numbers.
So those are my two takeaways so far between now and when we go to the board in September.
Can I just say that, your preview at the board meeting was really helpful for this meeting. Because you really helped to flesh out, some of where the, problems were with our, assumptions and with us having to adjust to our money being, kind of taken back and
Yeah.
whatever the rationale is. But, so that now these figures make a lot more sense as we're sort of looking at, okay, how do we tighten up, given this new budget reality we're dealing with, so. Now, all of the numbers are feeling a little less kind of scary to me, while we're not happy with them. but they're not as scary now, because, you know, you did a really good job, so thanks for that. Preview was helpful.
Trustee Croninger, can you please send me the email, the board policy about this mandatory amount of reserves we must
Yeah, I'll
have?
give you the board number. Can we look at the capital funds?
What page?
Because I'm not quite sure where the reappropriations.
It doesn't show, it never happened. It never
I
happened.
want it to show, because how are we ever gonna remember it?
Well, because it never was revenue. At the end of the day,
Wait, what?
that revenue never happened.
Wait,
We're
what?
talking about-
What?
What page, 24?
Page
Cap-
24.
Yeah.
The capital projects?
So
Okay,
remember,
24, okay.
we recorded revenue. It's an annual report. It's
Right.
not a monthly report. It doesn't show January, June through March. Us having that money and then March going away. No, it's an annual report. So it does not show. So the revenues that we got last year, we got around 10 million for the two funds, and then they took back 6.
Right.
So that other $6 million does not show. The only place it shows at the end of the year, it shows as obviously we got cash, that's the asset.
Mhm.
And then we're recording it because we never can, we cannot record that as revenue. We didn't earn it,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And so it's deferred
Right, that's
revenue,
right.
which is a liability. So assets, liabilities, equity,
Mhm.
assets plus, liabilities minus, even number, no impact. It's like it never happened.
Right.
But in the tentative.
Didn't they take it back?
Reappropriation.
Oh, it was on there because we were still thinking it wasn't gonna happen. But now we know how to treat it, right? Now they've come out and said it's not.
It's a mirage.
Are you talking about the 6 million they want back?
6.2, yeah.
Yes.
It-
So,
What frustrates me is we're gonna look at this in 2 years and not
Understand the mirage.
well, but actually, the only thing, if you think the other part, is that we increased the budget for those projects of $6 million because we had revenue.
Mhm.
And so when we took the money out, we took the projects out too. So our budget went down and, for revenues and expenses, the same thing. So,
Well, actually, we had a question, had his hand up, and then go after you.
I just want to get that number in this second reading, now that we've done the numbers, Brian. Remember we talked about it, it's rather than 9407008, that number is 3193234.
right here.
Yeah, in the second reading, so we've already updated.
Oh, I see, it is
Yeah,
in there.
right, remember we're talking about, I already went through, read the compendium, said what they
Got
want
it.
to
Okay,
do.
so it is in this one. Okay,
That one still has that
Got it, I
there
see.
in here, what we've
I
done
didn't,
is,
I didn't
in
notice.
the
it.
second reading, it will have the correct numbers tied back to the compendium.
I see.
Okay.
This is what's left.
Can
So that's the.
I stand corrected. Then.
can we footnote what happened?
Yeah,
That'd be a good idea.
We'll do it. Yes, okay, that's my third takeaway. Footnote,
like a little asterisk. It used to be 6 million here.
And we have the exact, and I'll reference the compendium too, so anyone can look it up.
got it, good, we'll do that.
So, and then Cornelia, so my question was, two things,
Sharon.
no, I had my hand up.
Okay.
So, because I have my hand up before Rudy. But anyway, so my question, is, all of the, most of the community colleges had this increase in reserves, right? That's what
Many,
you sort of
yeah,
shared, many.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with HERF and a whole lot of other things that were COVID related and then, state, and then the federal government sort of relief or something. So what I'm wondering is that 6.2 that they've taken back from us, do you think that that's related to them looking at everybody's reserves and saying, you know what, we can take some of this money back, because who has that kind of reserve in this economy? So I'm wondering if the fact that we had, more than our usual, like 20, 25, that's what we were at when I came in, 20, 25K budget. So I'm wondering if, because we had this 30-something that they were looking at how much can we actually take back from it, because they obviously don't need it, they got, I don't know, is that likely, or it doesn't quite?
They're smart people. They see our
It's-
numbers.
That's
just
what I'm
like they
saying, you gotta
see
spend your money.
All of
Like,
the
don't take
other,
it back.
other departments, they have a lot of demands, right? And so just like I was trying to say in my presentation, is that they want to be a good,
Fiscal, yeah.
Partner to
responsible,
and to everybody else. And so there's a tendency to publish more than they can deliver. And they have done that. And at the same time, the Department of Finance, they're really smart people. They see a lot of stuff. And so they're looking
Yeah, they
for
see those
ways to make it all work.
Mhm.
And in their mind, this helps make it all work, that to have us have that conversation. They don't have, you can't invent money just because there's a need. It doesn't
Right,
invent
right.
money. So,
I was just curious about
yeah,
that.
I think that they look at everything, including.
Sorry, can we please go back to page 24? Oh, that is page 24, thank you. It's just because I sensed there was like a little bit confusion in the room. So in that second column, the 22-23 revenues, this is still showing the 10 million increase as if the state had not yet said, we're taking away.
This page has not been updated on.
So it
Right.
still shows the 10 million as a revenue. So basically what is then going that in the second column, that second to last line, that will not be a 10, that will be a 4 million,
Yeah. Yes.
right? And
Yeah,
all
I think it's even
all the
less.
numbers to the right will change
Maybe
accordingly.
smaller.
Okay,
That's true, Rudy? It is. right?
Yeah, so what happened,
I
so
thought-
basically, one way to look at it, another way to look at it, another iteration of this, is that they gave it the 10 million, they really did, 10.4. They said, oops, go back in time and take 6 million and put it away for deferred, which is what the accounting is, so that's what yes, so to your point,
Yeah.
it'll say 4 or 6 million, 6.2 million.
Right, at the end of the day,
and I really liked trustee Tornich's idea about the footnotes. I remember back in the days, do you remember we had little like speaking bubbles?
Yep.
In purple and light blue.
Yeah.
But I think.
Yeah, put notes to work, yeah.
Okay, but just to follow through, the 6 million are already factored in the unrestricted general fund.
No,
Oh, so the accounting is 6.2 as of 6/30. 6.2 million will be transferred from that number. As of 6/30, will be transferred from that number to the balance sheet for deferred revenue.
it will
On
not,
7/1, the very next day, we will then recognize 6.2 into state apportionment.
it will not show anywhere on our books as having an asset of $6 million.
No.
Okay,
At the end of the year,
Right.
right? It will be offset, it will be.
we offset, okay.
But you're not going to increase your revenue in terms of the bottom line for next
Right.
year.
For this year?
Well,
So
yeah,
it
this
moved,
year.
Yeah.
the money goes from funding major repairs to funding part of our apportionment this year. It becomes invisible to us,
Right.
right? It's just part of the state's money that they would have given us this year. They're,
Becomes
again,
invisible.
they're using our money to pay
Yeah,
us
those
and
healthy reserves, all
unapologetically
got
saying
over
it's
there.
theirs.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Got it.
Now,
I kind of want to add something, Brian, I don't know if you talked to your counterparts, right? I kind of want to give a pat on Brian's back on here, this one, for this reason. If you go back a couple months, if we were like some other districts, what they do with the 9.4, it's gone. You've already budgeted, it's gone.
Right.
As they say, well, you know, where you're gonna have to pull it from your reserves.
Yep.
Right? So that's it, because we're not gonna give you the 6.2, you're just gonna be short of 6.2.
Right.
In our case, Brian, as soon as he saw that, had our facilities director say, I need you to reduce all the budgets because we need to protect that 6.2. And we're gonna then move it to deferred revenue so that we can then move it into our apportionment. Because we're not, if we don't do that, the state's not gonna give it to us.
Right.
Anyway, I just wanted to, think that was a good move on making that adjustment. I don't know if anyone has already said that. I'd say.
Thank you. Some other districts are more aggressive with their deferred maintenance. And so as soon as they get the money, they're out writing contracts.
That's what I'm
They
saying,
have
spend that
committed
money,
to-
but I
Right,
get
right.
it, yeah.
We, on the other hand, are still spending the years before. So,
Well, and I think that, can I say, I think that led to part of the problem, because the bottom line is that deferred maintenance dollars. First of all, they robbed from the IELM money. They took it from equipment. They gave us a huge bump last year. And what we all did, I can speak for myself, is we had all these projects in the queue. We had shovel-ready projects, we had plans already. So we sat down and we mapped them out. Okay, this quarter, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Well, you have 2 years to spend deferred maintenance. So that's the frustrating part, I think, for colleges, is we did the responsible thing. We took a look at that big pot of money. These are the projects we need. Here's the 2-year timeline, and we're gonna do it all. And then it was like we got punished for being responsible. And I think from my perspective as a CEO, that's what frustrates me the most is if you hear any of the, well, you guys had a lot of money. Yes, because we planned and we were. So it was very,
Guess what?
that's the worst part of it. in
Guess
my
what?
mind.
We still have a lot of projects that are. being
Yeah,
done.
exactly. It's crazy.
we
Yeah.
don't have the wherewithal to do the procurement or the
Yeah,
project
Well,
management.
and that's a different.
That's a whole.
So
other story.
that's-
Yeah.
Staffing.
One of our problems. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
correct that, but that's why we were
Right.
able to give the money back so easily because we had.
Because we had
Right,
used
we
it,
had-
which in
yeah.
some ways we could say, oh, thank God. Because we hadn't spent it, so we
Right.
can do this, and it's still a problem for the college.
I would actually rather have $6 million worth of projects underway right now.
Me too,
Yeah.
than just to be,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
anyway,
Do we know if there are other colleges that really got hurt by this maneuver?
Oh,
Yeah.
I've heard
Oh,
of
yeah.
some of the bigger ones have real organizational sort of processes that money comes in and it's budgeted very, very quickly. I know North Orange had that.
well, and in the LACCD, we definitely had that, and.
They have a group of people that are there working on these kinds of projects and so this is in the door and.
Yeah,
and encumbered for projects almost. Not good.
So I was just gonna, we have a few minutes left. If you could look at page 21, which is the 5-year projections, and go ahead, Anna.
Well, and after that, then I just wanted to explain a little bit more what the education protection account is after that. Which is page
Yeah.
26,
Yeah,
but after yours, 21.
Not 21 on here.
oh, it was a separate, it was a standalone.
For the
It's
capital,
not on here.
Oh, it's not on here? Oh.
Yeah, I had to go back to the board.
for the capital projects
Or
fund
maybe
balance,
Presentation, the PowerPoint.
there's a capital projects fund balance, that's not the one.
No, she's talking about the 5-year
Yeah, let's
projection.
see here. How do I bring up the other PowerPoint?
I get rid.
Okay, thank you.
Are you talking about the one that we got a while ago?
The PowerPoint is on here, and that's where the 5,
There we
Okay.
go.
6-year
There we go.
projections are.
Perfect, yes, thank you.
So I think it's 21 for that.
Okay, you're great, thank you. I'll go down to page 21. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a
We get the
different
share
one?
screen on open.
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead.
There you go.
Perfect, thank you. Here we go, there we go. I will make that bigger. Let's see, how do I do? Oops, can you, yeah, there we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
So here's and I always want to say it, this is the projection if we let it. Right, this just shows us how much work we have to do
Mm.
and making sure that this does not occur. And this has got, just as we have assumptions for this year's growth, we have built in pretty much consistent growth across these areas, local, credit, I think 1% all the way across. We have international students and out of state. Rudy, what is our projection there? I think it was, and this is in revenue, not in enrollment, in
Okay.
revenue. I want to say it's like about 5% or something. So, our costs are going to go up. So even if we have constant enrollment, our costs are going to go up. So we'll be able to increase our enrollment fee. So, but these have, and then down in the salaries and benefits and all the others, we have cost increases that we have, assumed in several of these, at least for the first year or so.
I'm
And
not
that's what leads,
apologizing
and that's
about
what
that.
leads to our deficits. And this is a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of assumptions in our, this year's budget, there's a lot. You multiply that out on here, and there's just a lot of things we can make sure happen for you.
But can I add, it doesn't take into account if we can recover enrollment, if we can meet those student-centered funding formula pieces, because especially as we grow, especially because two places where we're growing the most are in dual enrollment and in non-credit, short-term, those kinds of things, which bring in more revenue and traditional, than just traditional credit. And so this is conservative and doesn't really even factor in what is possible and the very things we're working on right now. Because
But it's not conservative when we come to the out
That-
of state.
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, which is something that we have to do better on in terms of how we project and how we assume, what we assume.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there has to be a plan behind an assumption of growth by
Right.
1%,
Right.
Needs to be realistic.
right? And
Or
that's, or 5%, whatever
Whatever it is. yes.
whatever it is, there has to be a plan we can point to where we say, this is why we projected it, that this is why we estimated or projected that this is what it would be.
I think we've had that in the past, that people have felt that they were planning and being realistic. I tend to think that there are a lot of the variables are out of our control.
Yeah, they
The
are.
housing, people's view of the United States, mass shootings, all of that, you
Yeah.
might say, hey, I'm going to a different country.
Yeah,
Relationships with China, we had a huge Chinese international student population,
But we don't have.
harder to do now.
Yeah, I just two things for me. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the point you just made, Dr. Jonas, about, the places where we see that revenue that's unencumbered, in some of these other ways. And also I'm recalling what VP Construct was saying about, our, not wanting to be as aggressive in our projections as we were. So
Yeah.
that 5 or 1% or whatever, understanding that we may need to contract that a little bit. The second point I want to make is I feel really good. I'm not apologizing about our decision on our salaries, because our faculty and our classified and our staff have been underpaid for a while. So I'm not apologizing for that where we are right now. But having done that, now we've set ourselves up for going forward, we have to really be mindful. But that's it. I'm happy about what we did. It was the right thing to do.
Trustee Gallimore, you want to hear about EPA?
Oh, and then my page 21 on my page on that.
did you want to define what
Yeah.
EPA is?
Yeah, a little bit better for me, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
You probably would know it better than me. I know it's just part of the
Yeah, education
ECA, is that what we're
No,
protection,
it's EPA.
Fund
Education
11
Protection. Act
Yeah, so
funds.
account.
Yeah, that was while I was gone, and I see the effect of it, but I don't.
Yeah, so that's money that comes to us that, the source of it was former redevelopment agency money. And basically what it is it's part of our allocation. And it's like, you have the property taxes piece of it. Then you have EPA funds that are largely driven by your local area. That's why a lot of times we get it after the fact, because how they do the calculation depends on where you are.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's not
Great,
usually
okay.
something we challenge. We just say, oh, okay, is
Okay.
that how much EPA dollars we're getting? But it's gonna depend on what that source of redevelopment agency, and other funding was that goes into the formula through through the Department of Finance, and then comes to the district through the state.
Okay.
It is
okay,
just
but it's
part of
state
our
funding,
portion.
Okay,
Yeah, it's part of
Okay,
our
great,
apportionment,
okay.
but that was the source of it.
okay. Thank you.
So just so you know, redevelopment agency revenue is an area of town where we get a portion of their property
Yeah.
taxes. And that was being siphoned off to run a redevelopment effort. And Jerry
And-
Brown did away with that because
Right.
much of that redevelopment wasn't really happening
Mm,
for redevelopment. So
And another source of the EPA dollars is when the Prop 30 that passed in 2012, that basically saved all of the colleges and coming out of the recession. That funding stream was made permanent through a different proposition in 2016. So that's why it's called Educational Protection
okay,
Act
okay.
funds, because it's 30 that was
Education
supposed to
protection.
sunset. Then Governor Brown wasn't excited about it, like he did not campaign on it.
Mm.
He basically stayed in the background. It goes through, so that plus the redevelopment agency then became part of our portion.
Okay, all right, good to know.
it
I
is,
was
it
just- I was
also
curious
gets back
about
to
it.
that. The student-centered funding
Right,
formula.
right,
These are
right.
just sources of money.
Exactly,
Yeah,
fund that.
exactly, yeah. Got
Whether or not it's sales tax
Right.
or income tax or this kind of tax.
But it's the more permissible part, because it's outside of Prop 98 funding.
Mm.
Right, because the Prop 98 funding is what goes into Prop 98, but then you have these other sources which make up the budget picture.
That's a short one.
Just to give a sense of like how these numbers swing. I think 3 years ago, our number was like. It's what I'm making up, it's like 10 or 12 million. Next year, not 20, 23, 21, 22 was like over 21 million.
Yeah.
Last year was like less than 7.
Mm,
Yeah.
Okay,
Just. Gotta to add to.
But sometimes when they underpay us, then later on, we get it in the form of what's called settle up dollars.
okay.
So they kind of owe it to us, and then we get it, but we might not get it for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, we, when I was on our budget committee, we call it, it was, rebenching funds. And often it.
Oh, yeah.
It had to do with like, one campus got this money that was projected based on whatever, and then they come and UCSB was always like sort of underfunded. And then, but we would always then they come back with this rebenching money and give it back to us, but a similar kind of,
Yeah,
situation, but it was split across all the UC. So anyway, yeah.
If I could take one last point, if I could, is that while we address quite a few of our sort of challenges. The, international out of area, all of that. One of the other really super important parts of this is this 10,000 threshold.
yeah,
Right.
In fact, that,
Yes.
so it shows us
Exactly.
growing away from that. But if we were to fall below that, Rudy and I are gonna do some
Take a
research. That's too many, because we get about 8.6 for being a middle.
Right.
The smaller one is 6 point something.
It's
It's
the
about
Yes, yeah, you
$6
mentioned that,
And
yeah.
so
That's the
we
difference.
don't know exactly what the rules are as to how fast that money would be taken from.
Interesting.
I
So-
think there's restoration.
Right, which gives you 3 years to
Okay.
essentially grow back.
Yes,
That's
it's
good to know.
restoration.
But even if this 12-year trajectory, the trajectory that we have today, that Brentwood, on enrollment continues. We would have 3 years in restoration, but it's real,
Right, no,
over time.
there's an endpoint, yeah, right,
right?
yeah.
So it gets back to my, what is our realistic,
right, size now,
Yeah,
right? If we're gonna right size for the future, what is that?
Yeah.
Is it
Right.
in the middle, is it in the small?
right, right.
Because again, if that's $2 million is a big deal.
It is a big deal, for anybody.
There's lots of risks we have, international, out of state, and just our, even if we're growing in these other areas that may pay us a little more.
right, then
And they do
you
pay,
still have to
CDBG
balance it
and
out.
all that, they pay us more.
Yeah.
There's another thing we haven't factored in here, which it would, from my point of view, I would like to see how it affects us. And that is if we go after any COs.
What?
Any COPs? that
Certificate of participation, it's basically going out to get loan money to do the PE building.
Oh,
Okay.
That's not in here.
right, right. Did anybody out there have a question? Anybody out
Question
there?
on how you get. calculate.
I
Yeah,
didn't see any hands
Yeah.
raised, but just checking.
I haven't consumed it yet, but I did.
It's there, yes, you can see
Yeah.
with any period, stuff like that. Anyway, that's the budget. So my three takeaways. Make the introduction more specific,
Uh-huh.
more explicit.
Mhm.
Number two is we will look at these other revenues, international, out of state, out of area, and make an adjustment. We'll leave the adopted budget like it is, and we'll, as soon as we think we have a good next estimate, we'll make that as an adjustment.
Mhm.
The third one is to clearly footnote the difference in the $6 million. Those are my three.
For the COP.
Or on the COPs, they just have a, if we were
Understand,
to.
yeah,
It would
if
be
we
in-
were to
it
get
would
it,
be in
because it would
this.
be in there.
In the projection, if we were
Yeah.
to make an assumption, this is how much we would borrow,
Right.
this is what the.
Oh,
make the
that would be
payment for the-
helpful.
This is what our payment,
Really helpful.
Right.
God, we'll do that, okay, so really that's the fourth item. Is to add to the projections, A debt payment.
What were the other ones?
the debt, payment. I'll go, over
Yeah.
it. I'll go. over it. Debt payment,
Their COPD, I think.
yeah.
It's here.
Okay,
Too good for.
four things, good,
All
All
right,
right.
and we'll have
Thank
those
you.
for you, or at least the three changes, we'll have those
for
on the
the,
September.
on 14th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
walking us through this.
You're walking.
But those are good
for-
questions.
Yeah.
Those are really good questions. Well, I hope you're gonna have some sort of fun dinner or something.
Yeah, well, no, because my husband went back to, he's at Penn State.
Oh,
so,
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
so he went back. And he ordered some flowers, and then
Oh.
the flowers called him back and said they're not coming, but we can order them in 2 or 3 days, and
Oh,
he was like, I
That's
wanted
not
them to
right.
be there after your meeting, I know. But I was like,
wow.
forget about it, we'll spend the money on something else, forget it.
He's in
Didn't
Happy
show up on my
Valley.
birthday.
Oh, my
He's
God.
in Happy Valley, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Happy Valley. Right. All right, everyone. Good night.
Okay,
Good
bye.
night. Are you walking back over?
I am, are you?
Yes, yes.